nerds, what's up? Today, it's my top 5 fantasy duos. See you after the jump. We all love a good ride-or-die BFF fantasy duo. We're used to seeing two names together, Holmes and Watson, Batman and Robin, Calvin and Hobbes. So today I'm going to jump right into my top 5 favorite fantasy book pairs. Let's start off with number 5, Sam and Frodo. I feel like this is the obvious classic fantasy duo that you kind of have to include in these lists. I love that they have such a sweet friendship, which sometimes isn't seen between male friends these days. They really had a lot of love for each other, and of course we all love how Sam really helped get Frodo through to the end, and they both wouldn't have been able to make that journey without each other. And even though it's a very classic hero journey trope, it's really hard not to feel connected to characters who travel on such a long journey together, all the way from the Shire to Mount Doom, and it's made even more poignant by the fact that there was a giant fellowship protecting them originally, and slowly everyone had to drop off until it was just the two of them. And I just think there's no more emotional pairing than these two. I feel like I'm very tied to them and their hero's journey, and that's why they're always going to have a top spot in my top 5 favorite fantasy duos. Number 4, the Weasley twins. Sorry, not sorry to include Harry Potter on this list. I feel like this list could not be complete without the Weasley twins, who are such an iconic duo that even saying their name backwards sounds weird. We're so used to hearing Fred and George Weasley that saying George and Fred Weasley sounds strange. I feel like there's a reason they are paired together like that and in our hearts. Growing up, and honestly still now, Harry Potter was my comfort series. It was the series I turned to when I was sad or upset or something was going wrong in my life. And I often necessarily didn't have time to read an entire book in a sitting, so I would choose my favorite chapters. And one of my very favorite chapters that I read over and over again when I was upset was in Order of the Phoenix when Fred and George Weasley leave Hogwarts. It's just such a brilliant scene, and I would just smile my guts out whenever I read it. They're such a great duo, and I think it's because there's that brotherly factor, and they're kind of that ride or die, there to the end, making up all sorts of mischief together and setting off for their goals and then accomplishing them. There's no better way to feel them, and I think that J.K. Rowling actually does a very good job of showing their camaraderie in the text. I think that's a problem with a lot of fantasy duos. We're told they're friends, but we don't really see it, and there's no denying with Fred and George Weasley that they are partners in crime there until the end. And I actually, spoiler alert, but can you really spoil Harry Potter at this point? I think Fred Weasley's death is the saddest death in Harry Potter, and I will stand by that simply because of its effect on George, and the splitting of that pairing makes it so much more devastating to me than any other death in the series, and there are a lot of sad ones. One more thing about the Weasley twins is, despite the fact that the Phelps brothers technically don't look anything like the Weasley brothers are supposed to look as described in the book, I think they did such a crazy excellent job of portraying them that they're one of the few actors I actually imagine when I go back and read the novels, and I rarely do that. So I think that's another reason why the Weasley twins have really been settled in my mind as such a good fantasy duo. So yes, Fred and George Weasley have to be on my list. Number 3, Rincewind and the Luggage. So the not quite human sidekicks in fantasy novels are almost always my favorite characters, and the Luggage is no exception. Pratchett just came up with the most bizarre concept for a character, and this vicious luggage paired with a cowardly wizard is just such a good satirical way to go about things. And even though this is a very silly book and a silly pairing, I still think there's some heart in their relationship, like in Sorcery when Rincewind gets jealous that the Luggage is thinking of having a new owner. Just their reactions to each other and their relationship is very funny to me, and I love the Luggage. It's probably one of my favorite characters in any fantasy novel, which is saying a lot, I realize, but just the hilarity and unique idea and that pairing together, I just love them a ton. And you guys obviously know my love for Pratchett runs deep, so his characters had to make this list. Number 2, Szeth-son-son-Vallano. So Warbreaker is my very favorite Brandon Sanderson novel of all time, and obviously I love Nightblood. He is a big part of that novel. And any Stormlight Archive reader has a soft spot for Szeth and his story, so bringing those two together is just amazing. And not only do I love their interactions, I think they're hilarious, I also love it from a literary perspective. We have Szeth, who spends some of his time as Truthless of Shinover, so he has all of this conflict about what's right and wrong and being strict to the law. And then he becomes a Skybreaker, which is also obsessed with law and truth and what's right and wrong. And then we have him paired with this sword who wants to destroy evil but doesn't actually know what evil is. Like, literary, that is just such a good pairing to me. Like, the conflicts and their discussions are so great on their own. But Sanderson also does a great thing where Vasher and Szeth are both very serious characters, and there's a chance that they could respond to Nightblood similarly, and that would make it kind of boring. But I love that he does make a distinction between the two of them. When Vasher responds to Nightblood, it's more out of a sense of duty and honor because he made this thing and he is very concerned about it, and he kind of tries to shut Nightblood down. But then you have Szeth, who also reveres and takes the sword very seriously, but it's more in that kind of reverence way, like he thinks he has a duty to this sword because someone gave it to him and he has to learn something from it. So that small distinction really makes a great pairing, and I'm really excited to see more of Szeth and Sword-nimi in the future, and I hope there's a lot in Rhythm of War, so we'll see soon. Before we get to number 1, I have to give my honorable mention, which is to Lan and Moraine from The Wheel of Time. I loved the beginning of Lan and Moraine's relationship. I really liked that it wasn't romantic, which is something we don't see a lot of, especially in The Wheel of Time, between a male and a female character. And I just kind of liked that they had been through a lot together and they believed in the same mission, and they didn't always agree with each other, and they butted heads, but in the end it really felt like they were there for each other, and I loved that. But I didn't like how their relationship ended, and I don't really want to say more than that because I don't want to give a huge Wheel of Time spoiler. I mean, it would be huge. So if you're my Wheel of Time readers, hopefully you can read between the lines and tell me in the comments if you know what I'm talking about. But just in the end, the relationship got really weird, and I hated how it seemed like they weren't friends anymore. So that's why this is off my fantasy duo list, but in the beginning, it would have for sure made it. Finally, number 1, Crowley and Aziraphale from Good Omens. Look, should I be sorry that there's 2 Terry Pratchetts on this list? Nope, I'm not going to be. Gaiman technically helped write Good Omens, so I feel like it's a little different. I'm sorry that I'm so obsessed with Good Omens, but ever since I read it, I cannot stop thinking about it, and I think Crowley and Aziraphale are just the best fantasy duo I've ever read, for several reasons. 1, the banter between them is actually witty. There's a lot of fantasy duos that are supposed to be funny and that maybe make me laugh on the inside but never on the outside. But this book actually made me smile. I liked the way they talked to each other. They felt real. And of course, just even the concept alone is very funny. A devil and an angel who don't want the apocalypse because they like the world as it is too much. I loved all of their scenes together. I love that they care about each other. And I think that's also the heart. When you have any funny fantasy duo, if it just stays at that silly level, I don't think you'll grow as connected to them. But really, even in this novel, Crowley and Aziraphale had a lot of heart in their relationship, had a lot of, hey, we're really good friends. And I think that balance of emotional and silly is what makes their relationship stick in my mind as so good. Okay, so what do you think of my list? Can you tell me if there's any big glaring errors of people I missed, or are some of these pairings on my list that you didn't like at all? Please let me know in the comments. And as always, if you like this video, please like and subscribe, and you can check out what I'm currently reading on Instagram at bookborn.reviews. See you next time. Bye.